You just getting into Grand Blue or just wanting to pick up Narmaya? Either way, I have got your back. I'm Kobe VT, a commentator and player of this game, Narmaya main, and it's time we to update our beginner guide and get everyone who wants to not only just get started with Grand Blue, but also if you want to switch to Narmaya, pick her up, this guide's for you. It's going to cover everything you need to get into Grand Blue and pick up Narmaya. As long as you are wanting to get in the game, you get to be starting from square one with this guide. Make sure you use those timestamps in the description. Jump around as you need. It's covering everything from the absolute bare basics to everything you need to get quick started on this character and start getting wins with her in ranked or in tournaments. Grand Blue is very similar into most of the anime style fighting games in which we use numpad notation. For those that are unaware of what numpad notation is, think of it as that numpad on 100% keyboards where you have on the right side, you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Think of that as the grid for a fighting stick lever. So where you have 1 is your bottom left. So if you're holding down back, you would be down at 1. And then if you're holding up and forward, you're up in the top right corner at 9. And that is how we indicate directions, as well as it ends with whatever button that you need. So for Grand Blue in particular, we have a few different buttons that we use. There's light, which is L, medium, which is M, heavy, which is H, unique, which is U, skill, which often gets changed to S, guard, which is going to be G or block. A lot of people will refer to it as the block button. And then of course we have skybound art and super skybound art, which will be shortened as well. Very unique to the game, and then a couple other things as well to get used to, but don't fear, it's going to get into the brain in time. There's not going to be too big of an issue getting into numpad notation, so don't let that sway you whatsoever. If there's a different notation system that works better for you, that's perfectly fine. Use that for yourself. Just know that the common notation system will be numpad, and with those separations and abbreviations in mind. There is a lot of lingo that gets thrown around all the time when people are talking about this game, and I can realize and sympathize with people who are just getting into it that there's a lot that might trip you up. So here is going to be a crash course into a lot of very common terms that Grand Blue players will say, and you'll hear commentators as well, but it does take some time to get used to knowing and recognizing. Safe jump is a term that gets used when your opponent has been knocked down and you go jump in the air and do an attack. And what this attack is meant to do is it's going to hit an opponent who is either going to try and wake up and press their own button, or it's going to have them block and continue your turn afterwards. And if they do decide to wake up with an invulnerable reversal option, you'll most of the time be able to block and get a punish off of that. Safe jab is very similar into a safe jump. However, this time you're using a very short duration move such as a 5L that will also allow you to block those reversals. A little bit harder to pull off than a safe jump, but definitely a powerful option that is afforded to you in Grand Blue, as it is a very common option. Meaties are the technique of hitting an opponent with a move after you've knocked them down on the frame that they wake up. Sometimes you'll hear what's called a true meaty, which is when that attack that is being used to hit your opponent on wake up has its last active frame, the last frame that has a hitbox, coinciding with the exact frame that the opponent is now actionable. So whenever you hear someone say true meaty, just know that they mean the absolute last active frame hits the opponent, but a meaty is referred to as any attack that's going to hit an opponent the frame that they wake up. In Grand Blue, there is a fourth way to execute a special move that spends some of your resources, and it's called ultimate. And as a part of this, It's a little lengthy to say a lot of the time for most players, so it gets shortened to U and the skill name or the skills notation. So if you ever see U, like something like U Kyoka Suigetsu, for example, just know that is short for its ultimate version instead of its light, medium, or heavy. DP is one of the longest running, most widely applicable shortenings and abbreviations in all of fighting games. It is short for Dragon Punch, which usually is an input that is done using a forward Z motion, and it's typically a rising invincible option. So you can think of Ryu's Shoryuken from Street Fighter. That's exactly where it came from. It oftentimes will get put to any move that has that same exact input method, but most of the time they're referring to almost exactly what that move is has that Z input motion and is a rising invulnerable move. Now, the thing that Grand Blue is pretty famous for in the FGC is the ability of not only having technical inputs, but also simple inputs, sometimes also called easy inputs. So with traditional or technical inputs, this is doing the inputs as you would traditionally think. Use your motion and then a button. Grand Blue gives the option for every player at any time to instead use a single direction, the skill button, and then a move that will indicate its strength, light, medium, heavy, or ultimate instead, and you're able to do this special move that way. So if you ever hear someone refer to using the easy input or using the simple input, they're referencing using that direction and skill button instead of the more traditional use the full motion. A parry is going to be any move that is waiting to catch and counter an opponent's attack. So it'll typically be a move like Narmaya's Mugen Kagura, which will activate but has a long duration of time where it will wait, and if the opponent hits that move, a small pseudo cutscene will play where the opponent's attack gets reversed and the entire flow of that match has been inversed. Neutral in fighting games is one of the most complex, nuanced topics, but to make it very simple to understand what people are talking about, neutral is primarily the time when neither player has a clear advantage. When both players are standing around, they don't want to inherently interact, they're trying to bait their opponent into doing something. All of that is neutral. As long as someone isn't right up in your face, then you can consider that neutral, and players are trying to navigate all those situations, and it's very in-depth when people go to talk about it, but just as a simple reminder, like just think of it as no one has advantage. They're just trying to figure out how to get in each other's faces. Spot dodge is a Grand Blue specific term, and this is called evade in the game. This is when you press a back direction and the guard button, and that allows you to dodge attacks while you're in place, gives you full invulnerability to all strikes and projectiles for a short amount of time. Just know that most people call it spot dodge instead of what it is called in game, which is evade. Roll is going to be a tricky one. So officially in the game, it's called crossover, which is a move that has upper body invulnerability to avoid some attacks while still moving forward, and is inputted with forward and the guard button. However, a lot of people will also use crossover or cross under to denote changing sides on the opponent. So this can get a little confusing if you get in the habit of learning this move as crossover like the game intends, but getting used to calling it roll will definitely help separate those two situations and get you that much faster into understanding all the different terms people are saying all the time. Oftentimes, you'll hear a lot of people talking about low, mid, or high attacks, and what these are going to be how your opponent has to block them. So a low move must be blocked crouching. It's going to sweep the toes, as it were. Those are going to be aiming low, and if you are blocking, not blocking low or standing, you'll get hit. A mid move generally denotes that you can just block it however you want. As long as you're blocking, you're fine. Doesn't matter if you're standing, you're crouching, you're in the air, you're all set to go. And then a high attack is going to be referred to as an overhead as well a lot of the time. And this means if you're crouching, you're going to get your head bonked. You're going to get hit. And you have to block it either in the air or by standing. Hitboxes and hurtboxes are some terms that get thrown around a ton when discussing moves. What a hitbox is the designated area an attack has that will collide with an opponent in an advantageous way for the attacker. So it's the move that checks if your opponent's going to get hit or not if they're in this specific zone. What a hurtbox is a zone that is considering if a hitbox is going to be inside of it, then you will be the one getting hit. So for example, a move that throws your fist out, your fist would be considered a hitbox, but your opponent can hit like your arm or the rest of your body. That would all be considered a hurtbox because you can be hit there, and it doesn't matter that you have your fist out if you get hit somewhere else. It's a little bit weird to get into the habit of knowing what these two are, but it's one of those things that just with time you'll get lickety split. RPS, rock paper scissors, the game we've played since children, still playing it today. In fighting games specifically, it denotes any situation where there are a few very typical responses that have clear and counterplay to each other. So for example, if you're gonna hit somebody with a far-reaching move, there's only a few options you have after that. And people are going to refer to that as RPS because, right, if I choose X option, it loses to Y. But if you pick Z, then you win. And there are a million interactions that are going to be considered RPS. People have different definitions of what situations are going to define what is rock, paper, scissors. But just know that's what they're talking about, is any situation that has clear counterplay and then clear counterplay to that counterplay. Basically, you're trying to throw a predictive option at your opponent, just the same as you would in rock, paper, scissors. Frame kill is probably one of the weirdest things to get into the habit of recognizing. And what it is intentionally whiffing moves, just pressing buttons to auto time something else. So for example, there's a duration of 40 frames that someone is wanting to do, and they're wanting to auto time a move that hits on a frame of 8. So they're going to try and whiff 33 frames of moves in order to auto time so they can just keep pressing buttons in sequence and not have to think about timing at all. It is a huge boon when you're playing in high intensity matches, since the less you have to think about, the better. You can just let your body take over and you've just killed some time basically, or killed some frames. TK, which is short for Tiger Knee, is one of those designations that has been around from the very start of Street Fighter's era, with a specific move. It's called a Tiger Knee. And this has evolved to being just the very concept of inputting an aerial special move the very first frame that is possible. Usually done with a very similar input to the original Tiger Knee, which was quarter circle forward up. All in one input. With Narmaya, it's a little bit different, but it's going to be that same concept of inputting her aerial special move the exact instant or as close to it as possible that she has left the ground. Now that we've gotten all the foundational work out of the way, it is time to get into the nitty-gritty. How are we playing Narmaya? What is she doing? What is this character? Why do so many people love her so much in this fighting game? And I mean, it's going to be pretty clear to see once I start going over it, but let's just start getting right into the details. All right, so Narmaya as a character is a stance-based character. What this means is that she has 2 sets of tools at her disposal, which is tied to her unique button. Now, this is one more very confusing thing to get started with. The names that get used for her stances are going to be Japanese when referenced by the entire player base, but the in-game references do have an English localization of them. So in-game, if you have it set to English, and this will be localized in different languages depending on which language you're playing in, you have Dawnfly and Free Flutter. These are referred to as Genji and Kagura by the entire rest of the player base because they are that way in Japanese, and Grand Blue originated with a Japanese company and is most popular in Japan, or at least started that way with Grand Blue Vanilla. That is how we're going to refer to them. From here on out, I will apply the Dawnfly Free Flutter in addition most of the time, but it's going to be a huge boon to get as familiar with Genji and Kagura as possible. There's plenty of mnemonic devices that you can use. So Genji or Dawnfly is also going to be the stance where you're going to have pink butterfly show up, you're going to have the katana sheath, and you're going to have access to her projectile, which is Zetsuna. For Kagura, that's going to be your blue butterfly stance. It's going to have the katana unsheathed, and that is where she's going to have access to Crescent Moon, which is her flip. Now, with these two stances, it can absolutely feel like information overload. And it's a little bit of that because you are in effect learning two characters in one. The upside to that, what makes it a little bit easier, is Narmaya's toolkit has been crafted over the many years of Grand Blue to flow into each other very, very fluidly. It's something that, you can start off really easily just playing in one of her stances, getting used to it, going to the other one, playing in just that stance, and you'll get really familiar with each one. But it's going to feel really natural over time to just keep blending these stances together, and eventually it'll feel like, you're just playing one character that just has a bunch of different options all at once. So don't worry about how much information you're going to have to start taking in. Take it slowly, bit by bit, and you're absolutely going to start ripping people to shreds, because while it is a lot to take in, you got to remember your opponent also is going to be in that same exact situation where there's a lot for them to take in as well. So being able to use that to your advantage will let you skyrocket with Narmaya. As fluidly as Narmaya can switch her stances depending on what the situation requires, Narmaya's game plans will also be able to switch as fluidly as necessary in order to adapt to your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. We have Genji stance, which is you're going to be your primary neutral based action, with great tools such as far medium, crouching medium, and far heavy. Genji really has a long threat range, to say nothing of also introducing Zetsuna, which is able to snipe opponents from a even further distance, even with some of the risks that we talked about with L Zetsuna, and opting for some metered options, using that stock fully with heavy Zetsuna or EX and ultimate Zetsuna as well. Both those tools really good at being able to stop opponents in their tracks. Once she has gotten that neutral hit with any of those options, she's wanting to approach, whether it's confirming your medium or heavy normal button into a transient to get to Kyoka Suigetsu, so you can knock down your opponent for a little bit, send them to the corner, or just already have them in a corner, get a combo. That is her bread and butter. Winning neutral for Narmaya is about getting to the corner. If you keep that in mind as your primary game plan, a lot of it will be just putting some pieces into place to make that dream a reality. And once you do get that dream, once you have your opponent in the corner right where you want them, Narmaya is looking to primarily use her Kagura stance, where there are a lot of advantageous buttons and the strike throw that Narmaya represents, which is her main bread and butter of pressure, where you're trying to make your opponent guess, are you going to hit them again with a move? Are you going to try and throw them and reset the entire situation? As long as you keep doing that, using huge moves like her Kagura 5L. Kagura's close H is also really great as this, and as well as Kagura 2M, and can't forget about her flip. Specifically when done as a TK, Crescent, Moon, and the EX variety, or heavy variety if you prefer, is going to allow you to keep your turn going. And if you do find yourself in Genji pressuring, Ultimate Zetsuna is another tool that allows you to keep your turn going. Yes, it has to spend some resources, but you're fine with that. The meter that gets spent gets regenerated pretty quickly, and if you're keeping your opponent in the corner, that is a-okay. All right, so for Narmaya's buttons, I'm gonna go quickly over every single button, their main function, and what you should do with them. We have Genji 5L. It's going to be a little bit slower at 6 frames, which the fastest is usually 5. It is plus on block, pretty good for mashing out or having some pressure starters. We have Close M, which is mostly just a combo filler. However, it is also 6 frames just like 5L, so it can be used in certain match situations as a higher attack level. You have Far M, which is a very good neutral poke option and counter poke to send the button out there. It has a hitbox contrary to its animation. It's just a fully horizontal rectangle, so it can get low profiled from time to time, and it is 9 frames, so it's a little bit on a slower side. Far H, for 1 frame slower, you get a lot more distance and a lot easier to confirm off of it. Very, very good neutral tool. It's called the fishing pole of confirms for a good reason. Just be wary, it does have a lot of time. Like, look at that, 8 more frames, over half a second of total duration. So make sure you're not using it over much. And then Close H, very, very strong button, very fast, has some good anti-air uses as well as being a great grounded button, and is a staple within our combos. 2L, very much just a mash button or is a low to catch people standing. Not too much to say about it otherwise, pretty unremarkable. 2M, very good, is the Far M's little brother. A little bit faster, a little bit less range, but still great for making your opponent think twice about approaching you, and also having a nice little crouching state, so a little bit harder to get hit by things. Not Raging Strike. 2H, very, very solid anti-air, a little bit slow at 11 frames, but you get some solid confirms off of it, and that will cover all of the normals. As for specials, L Zetsuna, very common use for Narmaya, very good range, very good speed, great to end your block strings with, as it is only -8, and it pushes back pretty far in the mid screen, so your opponent's not going to punish it very often. However, if they do predict and jump you, you will get punished. It has a lot of recovery, so be wary of overusing it. M Zetsuna is the slower version of the L version. However, it is plus on block. It does have a feint property that you can use to try and trick out your opponent with, but again, caution on overusing it, and a predictive opponent will be able to get that punish off. EX is going to be your -2 EX or heavy. It will wall bounce from pretty far away and allow you to get a nice corner confirm. It is one of those starters that you will see all the time in Narmaya combos. And then, of course, there is the ultimate version, which gives you a lot of knockdown frames, a lot of plus. But if you are close enough, you can actually confirm off of it. So you get about Far H range is where you can confirm. You don't have a ton of time. Like if you're out of here, not even 6XL will get you. But if you are outside of that range, just feel free to push them all the way to the corner as far as you can and get just that distance set up. For DPs, Narmaya has LDP, which is going to be a very fast 6-frame high anti-air level. MDP is going to be in the fastest class of meterless DPs at 9 frames, but does not have many frames of air unblockability, so just be aware that your opponent can block that in the air most of the time. EXDP, however, 11 frames, so a little bit slower, has full air unblockability, has full invulnerability as well, so you can use that if opponents hanging out a little bit too much in the air, or if you're a little bit worried about 2H not working, just go ahead, send that heavy DP. And then ultimate, of course, all the same lovely things that every DP has. Faster at 8 frames, so safe jabs will not work, and does not leave you in counter hit state, which is important. For transients, L is going to be a solid confirm one. Will not cross up the opponent. M, very slow. Like you can see, it was 12 frames slower, almost about 40% slower than the L version, but can cross up the opponent, which is very, very useful for her gimmicks. Just know that when you are crossing up your opponent, you input the specials as if you were still on the other same side that you started on. Even when you cross them up, it's going to be a little bit weird, but you'll get used to it, don't worry. EX, the very fast version, will not cross up the opponent, but does stop. So you can see if you are further away, it'll have more duration, but if you're close up, it'll stop a little bit faster. That is a very neat trick that you can use, and is essential for a lot of confirms, since it just is pretty quick. The ultimate version has a lot of very in-depth nuance if you want to get into the weeds of it, and the long and short of it, has some invuln that is really good at beating projectiles and some very, very telegraphed neutral options. Gives you a nice hard knockdown with an auto time safe jump after it, but if your opponent spot dodges or jumps it, it will leave you punished very, very easily. And that covers it for the Kagura buttons or Dawnfly. Now it's time to get into Free Flutter's buttons.
Stay on your toes.
So 5L, this is a godlike button. It is something to abuse. 5 frames up close, 6 frames from a little bit further away. Very, very, very plus on block. Very solid range as well. It is going to be one of your best buttons on this character, especially in the corner. There's just so much you can do with this once you get this position set up. We have our far end, which is going to be a little bit awkward to use. It has 2 different sets of frames, so it'll have a 7 and a 9 version, depending on how far they are away from you. It's not a move that you want to be using super often in this stance, since a lot of the times you're wanting to use far M, you just use the Genji version and you'll have more range. But there are times where you'll find yourself in Kagura where this 7 frame is going to matter, or you just need to use it. It serves its purpose. Close M is very, very good to help make your pressure a little less telegraphed, because it is 0. So close M into close M is going to beat a lot of people trying to mash out. They see you do, oh, close M is not plus, right? And let me press 5L here. And they do it a frame slow, and it's just going to get beaten, and you're going to get a free combo. Don't overuse it, but it is good to know. Far H is a very good button. It has a lot of range, very solid, and not that hard to convert off of. It is a little bit slow at times, but has a faster depending on how close you are, so be aware of that. Close H has a ton of uses for it. We'll get more into that in the Oki section, but can anti-air just like Genji, and just big old button with a lot of good uses. 2L, the same as in Genji, not the most applications, but is perfectly functional as being a low 2L option. 2M is amazing. It is plus on blocks, a rarity at especially at 7 frames. Doesn't have a ton of range. Like, its animation kind of lies its range. It's a little bit less than what it looks like, and its hitbox looks like a elementary school art project, but just know that you get to continue your pressure, and it can be +2 if you're a little bit spaced, which is a nice little thing about it. 2H, this button is actually devious for anti-airing, because a lot of opponents will try and bait out 2Hs by jumping over and around you, and 2H has the ability to catch them. It has a hitbox all through on different frames in its arc. And of course, it gives really good confirms as well. As for special moves, El Kyoka is going to be your main hit confirm a lot of the time, because of just how things will work out. It's the fastest one she has at 13 when it's not out of transient cancel. M will give you some more distance, but it can kind of defeat a lot of the Oki purpose. EX will be your combo tool version. Do note that M and EX are going to do the same amount of damage. So unless you really do need the combo, it is much more advised to just use M version than it is EX. And then of course, we have the ultimate version. This will give you a combo from further out than EX will, and does more damage on hits with a better knockdown. So use that when you need it for some damage, and can be used in a lot of different niche combo routes, some that we'll get into a little bit later. As for her DPs, she does not have a traditional DP, it is a parry. LDP is going to be the same in both stances for all intents and purposes. 6 frames, really good anti-air properties. M will be a 20 frame parry. So the unique thing about Narmaya's parries, the total active frames, or the total startup, is not all catch. About half of this startup will be catching mids and highs, including projectiles. You can be thrown and you can be hit by low attacks no matter how early into the startup you are. So be wary of that. That applies to both M and H versions. The H version is going to have a little bit more active catch frames, so you'll have a little bit more time to catch your opponent's attack, and will be air unblockable the full time, similar to the Genji version of those DPs. Ultimate will parry every single attack, so it only loses to throws, and then of course your opponent just blocking. But an opponent that really likes to hit you with low attacks while you're in this stance, because they know your meterless versions of parry can't stop it, hit them with one of these and they'll think twice. And then we get into flip. So flip has 2 different properties. It has an air and a ground. So grounded L flip is a little bit slow. It's going to be minus most of the time, not super minus though, and can be plus if you're a little bit spaced. M will be generally, as a rule, unless like you're hitting it from downtown, essentially, is going to always be minus. Like, yeah, if you're that far away, you can get plus. The fun thing to do is what we call little Schrodinger's cross up. So you see where it hits on top of Grand's head, and then if you're just a little bit closer, you can cross up and be plus. H version, this is what you'll see people complain about a ton. It is always plus, has something unique in which you can change its momentum. So if I don't press anything, it goes about that far. Or here, we'll do this from here. So you see, that is if you have no momentum change. You can stall it, or you can send it to go further. It is very, very nice because you can get yourself to go cross up from further away than your opponent will expect. Now these, as I mentioned earlier, have an air version. We'll go over the ultimate at once because they are very, very similar. So we have the TKL version. And the reason I'm going over the TK versions, because these are what you're going to most commonly be used. You're not going to use the air versions a lot. They have some niche uses, but those are still being explored in their full uses. And don't get used too often as a result at the moment. But see the comparison here, it's -3, but it's very, very safe. You get pushed back a lot. This is commonly used in the corner to bait opponents' brave countering. So if they do want to brave counter and they delay it by a singular frame, you bait that brave counter out. That is the main use of TKL flip, especially as a meaty, and you get a full punish off of that. TKM flip. The air L flip is used specifically for combos. If your opponent blocks this, you're dying. Like -15, they get a quarter of a second to do literally whatever they want to you. So be very, very cautious of using that. It's just all combo filler as far as you're concerned. Only pay attention to using this move when it's in a confirm. TKH flip is the other discourse button about Narmaya. Very, 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 very strong. Look, it's very quick because it's only 5 frames. +2 on block, so you keep your turn and you get a full combo off of it if it does hit in the corner. And then on counter hit, you get a combo off of it in the mid screen, which I will show just quickly. So you get to do this in the mid-screen. It's very, very good, very strong. Be careful over abusing it because Narmaya's strength comes from her threatening this move at any time. So going 5L into this, so very threatening because you can also go 5L into throw. It is her enforcement tool. So make sure you're using it appropriately. And then, like I mentioned, she has ultimate flips. So the grounded version and air versions are the same damage. They are the same duration. They differ in a couple ways. They do have some invulnerability. They have 8 frames of invulnerability for the grounded and 13 for the air version. The grounded version starts its invulnerability at frame 9, whereas the air version starts at frame 4. The difference in between these two is, one, you have the aerial version, which will bait throws a lot more easily. And that's what it used for a lot, is air or brave counter baiting. Those are its main uses, as well as an anti-air, as you'll hear, because it's really good at stopping 2Hs. The mechanics of it, ultimate flip will teleport to the opponent right in front of them if you're grounded at all times, no matter how far you are away. Like, you could be all the way back here and you will go right to the opponent. Air version, depending on your momentum, will put you in different states. If you're just jumping straight up and down, you'll land right where you started. If you go back, it'll send you back a bit. If you're forward, it will put you forward. If you're up in the air, it will try and get you to the opponent in front of them. But if you wait just a little bit longer, usually done off a super jump, then you're able to potentially teleport behind the opponent, which is really, really helpful for a lot of anti-air baiting, because then you don't have to worry about your opponent using their anti-air button and it catches you because you're in front and it was a slow. If you do it behind them, then because you start in front, they react when you're about here, and if you get behind them, that'll whiff. All very good stuff. The last thing I have to talk about, actually, that I almost forgot, are both of her 2Us. These are very special. So they get hard knockdowns, they are lows, incredibly unsafe if they get blocked, especially the Kagura version, because if your opponent blocks this, you're getting thrown. Like, your opponent's gonna throw you at all times for this. Unless you're like ultra spaced. Genji 2U is very good as a check for people who are going to be walking back. It has a lot of far distance. Does get you to confirm into Ultimate Zetsuna with a confirm off of it, actually. Almost every single time you'll do it. So make sure you're using these 2Us, but you're not abusing these 2Us. They're pretty high risk when you're not entirely sure of their effectiveness, but they are decent to great rewards for when you're using them. Just something to keep in mind.
Remember your training.
For Narmaya's dashing attacks. So, dashing 6XL, or dashing light attack. This will always be the same, regardless of your stance that you're in. Unique in a lot of ways to many other 6XLs in this game, as it hits a little bit shorter, but it hits longer away, which is a boon and a curse, because Narmaya can't always confirm off of her 6XL, but it does reach a lot further. And then also there are certain situations where her 6XL will not hit, where others will.
Stay on your toes.
With 66M, this is also universal to both stances. It is a very quick sweep option. It hits low, gives you a nice knockdown. Most characters can't punish a max range version of this, making it pretty safe, but there are some characters who can, so it's something to be aware of. The 66Hs, not very well used because they're not the greatest. So in Genji, you have what looks like go into the air, do this flip, like sort of like Genji Kagura flip, right? It's all grounded the whole time, so you can get thrown out of it. It is always safe, which is good because it's a slow, very telegraphed move, and does have some low crush opportunities. And by low crush, what I mean is that it'll go over some low moves, but it doesn't necessarily have like being airborne or shift her up in a way where she just completely avoids all low attacks. You can get confirms off of it in the corner and on counter hit, but those are a little bit rarity. It has some niche use with Kara Raging Strike, which is a very underutilized tool, but it does exist. For Kagura 66H, this button is very much a hard call out on people mashing. You will get a confirm of it in the mid screen if it hits. On counter hit, absolutely. Has a lot of uses and some combos, especially ones that are being developed right now. For example, like, there are some really interesting combo routes you can do. The only thing to note is it's always unsafe on block, so be careful over using that button. And then for her supers, her Skybound art, pretty good ender, does a lot of damage. It's very weird in its knockdown frames. It gives you manually timed ones, which we'll go over how to make the most of it. Otherwise, does have this unique property. If you hold the H button, you can stop it from doing its follow-up and continue the confirm elsewhere. It is used in one scenario realistically, and not very often as well. Don't have to really worry about it. Just know, take your hand off the H button once you've used this super, or else you might risk yourself dropping a kill when you otherwise wouldn't. And then for her super Skybound art, when you're at below 30%, going to deal a lot of damage, rip away those brave points. If you are in the corner, what's going to do is going to send you to the mid screen. Gives you some auto-timed Oki setups, which is nice. A way that you abuse it. If you're like not in the corner, then you don't have to worry. It's going to just send you closer to the corner, which I will show just for showing sake. But also you can see it does quite a bit of damage when you're doing it technical. It almost always will side switch, and you can make a very much abuse of this property by using a combo route that will side switch you. So this is one of those routes that Narmayas will use from time to time when this confirm won't kill, because as I can see, it does like 50% damage. You can keep the corner with it. But yeah, that covers all of Narmaya's buttons. It is time to get into other parts of her kit. Narmaya's pressure is very fluid and open-ended, can pretty much be whatever you want it to be. There's a ton of options Narmaya has on account of both of her stances, but I'm gonna go over some of the very common ones to get you started. Ones that I use, you'll see Dragalia use, you'll see all over the world. The best Narmayas will even use a lot of these very, very often because they're good and they work. So everything usually predicates around getting your opponent to block Kagura 5L. It is the best pressure starter that she has. You have every option because you can go 5L, walk up a little bit and throw them. You can go and then do it again. You can do a slight walk and then do 5L again and just reset things. You can just go 2 5Ls if you want and still be plus. So you can do some fun things. You can do 5L, 5L into 6XL, slightly reset yourself. Just know from that distance, 6XL won't let you get another 5L, but it allows you to get 2M, which is still plus, which is fun, right? That's the key of everything, is you're trying to structure your opponent to try and guess on either you throwing or pressing a button and continuing to drown them as much as you can in her buttons. Words like stagger pressure get thrown out a lot with her, which is just the art of, you know, slightly opening up these gaps. So varying them and their lengths in order to make your opponent think, okay, this time something else is happening, let me press a button, try to get my turn back, and all of a sudden they get hit by something else and you're like, oh no, I'm dead. Ways to do that, there's also, you can do dashing into 5L and then 2L. And the way you want to do this is not hold the direction. So like if you're dashing, this is very much easy to do with the dash macro. Please use it. Hold the dash macro and then get your 5L, and that way it'll all link. Because if you don't, and like you stop before it, it will have a chance of not connecting of the 5L, 2L, 5L. So that's something to be worrisome for, but just use the dash macro. Honestly, it will save your life. It'll help you a lot and you'll be perfectly fine there. 6XL, of course, the 6XL If you get a nice deep hit, you can go into 5L as a frame trap. Very, very nice. 5L into TK flip. This is what's going to make your opponent stop from guessing on your throws. You will kill them if this guess is right. If they don't, they're either going to brave counter you and you're going to just accept that, or you get to keep your turn and continue to do things because you're +2 and you get to hit them with 5L and they can't do anything about it. Except for use an invulnerable reversal, but that's fine. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about. Invulnerable reversals will happen. What you want to do is accept that. Your goal as a pressure, if your opponent is using a reversal, that means they are scared. They are really wanting to use an all-in or nothing option to get out of your pressure. And if you can get yourself to notice when they're going to do that, you will absolutely delete them. So as proof, so let's put Grant to do it. So let's say he's getting very antsy on defense and wants to DP. You do this. Watch what happens to this life bar on just a simple combo. Very simple combo, and I just did almost half the life bar of this Gran just because they got antsy. That's the key. Now, if they do something, for example, as the ultimate version, because this will like stop a lot of your pressure strings that you're normally safe, just accept this, okay? That is what I want to get into your head, is that means your pressure is so scary, they're willing to spend 50 meter to get out. They're willing to invest resources. That is a good thing. So fully and finally, the last pressure string that I want to definitely go over, all this on Dust Loop as well, is the very long string that you have. So when you're up close, 5L, 5L, 2M. So usually you want dash momentum for this.
Remember your training.
And you will connect all the way into a Genji far H or far M or 2M. Granted, there are sometimes some characters that this doesn't work on between this 2M and another button, which is fine. You just have to alternate your pressure a little bit. Sometimes doing 5L, 2M, 5L will work instead. And at the end, you can do EX Setsuna to set up that spacing trap I mentioned earlier. A lot of the times, you're going to want to use Kagura far H. Your opponents will either be deer in headlights and they won't punish the fact that this whiffs, or they're going to get counter hit most of the time. And then you get to fully combo them for it. It's great. But that covers it for your basics of pressure. Just remember, you are a strike throw based character. You're trying to get your opponent to guess whether or not you're going to strike them with a hit or you're going to throw them. TK flip very much allows you to help abuse that. And getting reversal means your pressure is working. All you need to do is start working around figuring out where they want to reversal, bait it out, and then kill them for it. Okizeme, or called Oki, is one of Narmaya's most crucial aspects to her game plan. You will win or lose games based on how your Oki setup goes. Most of the time, you're going to have three options, or three categories, really. And it's going to be meaty, safe jab, or safe jump, which I will get into each of those sections individually.
Nice and easy.
For the first section, meaties, your goal for this is to stop your opponent from pressing something on wake up. So, for example, you hit them with the combo, and you want them to stop pressing on wave. You want them to respect what comes next. A meaty is how you do it. Now, in theory, all this is hitting your opponent when they wake up. The quote unquote true meaty is hitting them on the last active frame of whatever button you're hitting on, so you have the most plus frames possible. It's not necessarily the most important thing to worry about unless you're trying to do safe jabs, but for the people that create these setups for safe jabs, that is more so for something they use to calculate, and you can use as your calculation for creating these setups. There's plenty of ways to do it. Safe jumps and safe jabs are all considered meaties. There's subsections of them, but just for the big references, you're just wanting to hit them with an attack, and if you get a nice close H counter hit, you're off to the races. Close H is a common one. 5Ls are common as well as meaty. There is quote unquote meaty throw. Now, this is not the most used because as you can see, your opponent can reversal throw and you'll tech it because of throw protection. It's unlike Street Fighter where they don't have any. You can just be thrown immediately upon waking up. Granblue, you have to wait 6 frames to throw your opponent again after they're awake or they've blocked a move. So you can't just like throw them on repeat without consequence. So just be careful of using that. Meaty throw is very useful because once you started hitting them enough, then what's gonna happen is they're gonna start pressing and then you'll hit them and then they'll stop pressing and then they'll try and throw you, or they won't do anything at all, and then your throws become a lot more effective, and then it just compounds on itself, and then eventually you'll do something like hit them into a TK flip and you're off to the races. Safe jabs are very core to Narmaya's game plan, and as well as you'll see used quite a lot by Narmaya's at the higher level. It takes a lot of calculations to do and create new safe jab setups that are not manual, but I'm going to show you a few very common ones and some ways to auto time that will help you really get these under your belt, especially in mid-screen and in corner. So in mid-screen against a selection of characters, doesn't work against all of them. There is a document that describes it.
Stay on your toes.
L Kyoka Suigetsu or L slash into a micro dash close H will let you bait out a ton of reversals. And if they don't use that reversal, it will hit them with a +2 on block close H, which is glorious. And that is pretty much the only mid-screen auto, quote unquote, auto times safe jab setup that Narmaya has. You can do things manually if you wish, but those are a little bit harder to do. You have to just get into the time. The way to set that up is you have your opponent on wake up, you set the action to random, and you have them, someone like Grand, do M Rising Sword, throw, and then block as the actions. That's all you have to do. And for that, to get it to block, you just set Grand to block and then just have him do nothing. So you'll come over here, you'll come up here, set to blocks all, and then you'll throw and then do that on repeat.
Nice and easy.
That is how you'll set that up if you're doing manual times. For the corner, there are a ton of safe jab setups. Some that happen just naturally as of combo routes. So for example, one of the basic corner setups, this one, it's a little harder to time. Like even I'm not fully consistent at getting the proper timing for this specific safe jab going. But see, as there, it does work. That safe jab will be very useful many times because it does keep going. Ends in 5L on the Kagura stance, which is great. There are plenty of different combo routes. People found their own fun, unique ways to get safe jabs. Like I have this combo route that does it. The only thing you need to keep in mind is that these safe jabs and these versions of safe jabs actually do not work against ultimate reversals. Ultimate reversals are just a frame too fast, which is their design. They're meant to do that. So if you have to do something much different, you have to basically unmistime your meaty and make it not hit meaty in order to block them. Don't worry if this happens to you. That is by design of the game. That is what you're looking for. You just change how you're approaching your Oki setup otherwise. Now, that is really the long and short of it for safe jabs. There's a ton of them to do. I showed a couple of them. That this L Kyoka into the corner, into whiffing 2L into 5L is going to be one of your main ones. It's a very demanding timing for it. The most common way you're going to do it is going to be off of that restand route with Ultimate Setsuna, but it applies there. You can also manually time these with throws and other OP setups. Just something to practice, and once you get the hang of it, it'll start to input into your game plan just beautifully. But that covers the long and short of it for safe jabs. Unlike safe jabs, safe jumps are going to be your options that will beat ultimate reversals. Now, they still will not be ultimate parries. Neither safe jab nor safe jump will. You'll have to fully bait those out or use a throw in order to punish them, but you get multiple ways of doing the safe jumps. So mid-screen, your most common one is going to be throw into super jump JH, and that will give you your safe jump. This works both sides, pretty much anywhere. In the corner, you just need to do a regular forward jump into JH. Very, very simple, very easy. And what you are looking for when getting these safe jumps, because there are other buttons that do it, you're looking for about plus 44, plus 42 when you're in training mode. So for example, you can do this off of use Setsuna, or yeah, you transient, because you plus 44. 2Us will let you do it. 2U is actually one of the exceptions to this mid-screen. 2Us, you can just do that. But this is a good point. See how I crossed up and that did not work? When you're this close to the opponent, you just use JM to get your safe jump. And if you do cross them up, then it's going to work beautifully. Like that. That JM will be your answer instead. So don't be fret if you're crossing over, just use JM, it'll be fine. The JM will work anyway, but JH is just more widely used because it does have a better situation when your opponent gets hit. So that is pretty much it for the mid-screen safe jumps. Like if you do something like use Setsuna, or not use it, you transient. Use Setsuna can work. It's very, very plus. So like you have to really weirdly manually time it. Don't worry too much about it. Just run them to the corner a lot and do immediate. Not a lot of people are going to reversal there. Not work on your safe jab timing for that. That was my recommendation.
Remember your training.
You have some setups in the corner. So I showed like the throw, or you have this strange one. So I mentioned this earlier with SBA, or Skybound Art. It is very weirdly plus. You need to do a slight delay in order to get your safe jump. Now, one thing that you can do that helps to time this is when you go through your SBA, you wait for it to fully complete, stand switch, and then jump in JH. Neutral jump JH. Now, what this will do is, because stance switching 5U is 10 frames, it takes that 52 to a 42, which allows you to do a safe jump with just jump JH. Very, very great interaction that has been found. Definitely make sure you use that. It helps to auto time it a little bit easier and take a little bit of that stress off. For something like SSBA, for example, it gives you it doesn't have this property. It lets you do the nice, easy, you just jump forward and you get your safe jump, which is nice. Like that. But yeah, that's really it for safe jumps. There's a lot of weird ways and unique safe jumps that are just too much to go over in one video, but Dustloop will always have them. Narmaya Discord will let you know when you ask them of, hey, where can I get a safe jump here? How do I do it? We're pretty responsive to that. As for defense, Narmaya has quite as in-depth, nuanced defense as she does everything else because of her two stances having very different tools available to them. You're basically half of everything you want in each stance for defensive mechanics. So as I alluded to earlier, Genji only has a 6 frame rate, does not have the fastest normal in the game. You're limited to 3 6-frame options, or you immediately jump to 8. There's no 7, there's no 5. So what you have to do is rely a little bit more on your trickiness when defending. So for example, let's take this basic string of Gran doing close L, far L. You're not going to be able to match in between that plus frames, but when he's doing something like this, see, you've got your 6-frame buttons are going to all whiff. They're just all going to whiff here.
Stay on your toes.
So if you're going to challenge after this, your goal is to use 2M or far M to do so. You want to make sure you wait. You're going to start getting a better feel for this when your opponent is minus, or you can, read and look at pretty much every pressure string and see, okay, what things can your opponent not do after it. That will be your ways to take your turn back. It's going to be with these, but if they're sitting up close, you can definitely hit them with a 5L and stop them from advancing there. Throw is also a very good technique. If they're being a little bit too delayed, you'll be able to throw them. So for example, if I go very much a delayed string here on Gran, see how throw might not work, but boom, I hit Gran, counter hit him for delaying too much. So it still does work. You also have DP if you know they're going to press afterwards. It's very risky because if they don't press, they get blocked and you take a big counter hit punish. So that's great. Overall, those are your main options. Of course, you've got 5L, 2L. Close M can work. It is a little more risky to go for, but it is an option you have. And as well as you never want to go over. Oh wait, don't sleep on 2U. So they're walking back, for example, they're trying to bait you to press something like 5L or 2L, right? You use 2U and that's gonna stop them in their tracks. Plain and simple. Be careful not to overuse 2U since it is a little bit slow for a button in this scenario, but it is very, very useful. Kagura, on the other hand,
Stay on your toes.
this is going to have some nice, fun options. So of course, the 5L is still not going to save you in a lot of situations. There are not too many times where 5L will win in Kagura where it won't in Genji. But it is useful to note that if your opponent is being a slight delay, that might not work for Kagura, or it might work for Kagura, not work for Genji. You also do have parry, so this will stop a lot of weird strings, because if your opponent usually has something that might bait out Brave counter or potentially bait out a GP on block, then parry will stop that. They can't block the parry if they've triggered it, which is the nice thing about a parry. Just have to know that a smart opponent will start doing a low attack, and that will then bait out the parry and punish it like that. So that's something to be careful of. Of course, 2U has its use in this stance as well to catch those people walking back. It is a lot faster at 7 frames, so it's nice to do. 2M won't hit them for walking back, but it will let it be blocked and let you start getting out of the corner a little bit. And then of course, we have good old Brave counter. So boom, Brave counter. This is your resource. You see those 3 diamonds in the top of the screen? You can use one of those to get out of pressure. Narmaya in the mid screen does rely upon Raging Strike confirms quite a bit in order to make the most of her hits. So it's not something you want to use all the time. But if your opponent is doing something like they're just trying to 6XL you over and over and over again, and you don't want to deal with it anymore, like you don't want to try and gamble on being late with a button, then you can just simply Brave counter right out of it. All 6XLs are guaranteed Brave counters. They will never be able to block as a brave counter after 6XL. Hold on, I'll show you. So we have that being nice and blocked. Like, unless you're super late, like, and delay it, you don't have to worry. The second you see yourself block 6XL, just brave counter. If you don't want to deal with it, that is perfectly fine to do. And there are times, like, if you're pressuring in the corner and like your opponent is going to try and run out at you, brave counter them back in the corner. That is perfectly fine to do. It's more of an offensive thing, I realize, but don't underestimate the value of trading a brave point to put your opponent right back into the corner. Put yourself in plus frames. And that's another thing too for really tense defensive situations. Like if you're getting down to final hit scenarios where both of you know that the next time someone gets hit, the game is won. If they choose to 6XL you, just brave counter. It doesn't matter at all how much damage you're taking, what your confirms are. If the next hit's guaranteed to kill, or you can do a really simple, just basic confirm to kill them, use those brave points. You have 3 of them, use them. You can regenerate them by using a super, so you can definitely regenerate at times. Defense as a whole is very, very hard to do in complex. It's going to be very much something you get used to. You'll ask questions, you'll find knowledge. Over time, it will get better. Just be smart and be cautious with what you're pressing and when, and you'll start to figure out better and better defensive habits. Watch and copy players that you see enter tournaments, and over time, you'll get very good at defense.
Remember your train.
For any further resources, there are going to be a few that I will recommend to take into account. So the first and foremost is going to be the Dust Loop. The Dust Loop is going to have a ton of information, not only about Narmaya, but also other characters. Checking it out, having it as a quick reference is going to help you 99% of the time. Definitely recommend it, and that's not just because I edit the Dust Loop very often. There's also the Narmaya Discord, which is going to be linked in the description, and it will be always linked in the Dust Loop. There are plenty of Narmaya players. Almost every single top player in North America and Europe is in and talks in this Discord fairly regularly, or at least will answer if you at them within some form of a delay. Some of them are busy. People have different schedules, but you'll get a ton of like-minded Narmaya players who are going to be willing to help you out. There's even an entire channel category dedicated to learning Narmaya that will help supplement with this video. And then of course, our wonderful xninebreaker is going to be making a guide, which will be linked once it comes out. And that will help you take it to the next level. Overall, I thank you all for watching. I know this video is very, very long. It's a beginner guide. It has a ton of information, very comprehensive. Appreciate everyone. I've been KopeyVT. You can find me everywhere at KopeyVT. All my socials will always be linked. I stream quite often, Grand Blue and other games. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.